Folks, I've often been asked to travel to Orania during my visits to South Africa, and I find it interesting that people would like me to go there. And I thought that we should talk about that today. So here we go. Let's talk a little bit about Orania, what it is, what it's not, and why people are so fascinated by it.
Welcome back once again. This is Chris Report, and he assured me that St. Simon's down in Boulders. Folks, this is Chris Wyatt reporting from South Africa.
The intense and bizarre obsession with Orania from the media, click-hungry content creators, right-wingers, leftist white liberals, and black supremacists is odd at best. At worst, it borders on disingenuous. Why is the, at times, fanatical coverage of a private company in a remote, desolate region of South Africa with a negligible population that is largely self-sufficient so important? A remote town, nearly self-sufficient, with a minuscule population of approximately 2,500, seems to give endless chest pains to the media and politicians looking for advantage to exploit. Now, over the years, dishonest media and commentators have disingenuously described Orania as a haven for white supremacists, racist, failing, sad, and ineffective. In reality, Orania is something very different indeed. Interestingly, although the community has a strong faith-based element to its existence, media do not attempt to paint it as another Jim Jones or David Koresh-like cult. Now, most likely this is because South Africa is overwhelmingly a Christian nation, and Oranians are Christians. Yet the media do seem obsessed that nearly all residents are white. Strangely enough, there is no such obsession with the 2.7 million hectare Zulu-owned Inganyama Trust. Apparently, it's only wrong or racist for white folks to live on their own, not for the Zulu, who happen to be black. And this has been the main focus for media and political figures' obsession with Orania. Never mind the fact that there's nothing racist about its existence, Orania is a cultural settlement. Now, if I were to attempt to move to the Amish community nearby to where I live in Pennsylvania, even though the Amish are friendly, I would not be welcome. I do not share their religion or culture. I do speak fluent German, but their version, known as Pennsylvania Dutch, is challenging for me to follow. I also cannot live in Orania as they will find my Afrikaans proficiency lacking, and I'm not a Dutch Calvinist either. To be perfectly honest, I'm not sure I would want to live in such a remote, isolated location. By contrast, the Inganyama Trust occupies some excellent, well-situated land in the KwaZulu-Natal province. But there, I'm also not really welcome. Not because I'm white, whatever white is, but rather because I'm not a Zulu. So how is that different from Orania? The truth of the matter is that the ANC, many political figures, poorly educated black supremacists, and leftist white liberals are bat crap crazy frightened about a non-existent threat. Their misunderstanding of history, or frankly, their willful ignorance, leads them to draw wild conclusions based on nothing but their fears. Now, this is sad, and it is unfortunate. So what is Orania? Why does it exist? And who has actually been there? The stated goal of Orania's founders was the preservation of Afrikaner cultural heritage and selfwerkzaamheid, or self-reliance. In December 1990, about 40 Afrikaner families headed by Karel Boshoff, this was the son-in-law of Hendrik Verwoerd, bought the dilapidated town of Orania for about 1.5 million rand. At the time, that was 585,000 US dollars. Now, that connection to Verwoerd partly explains the unfounded fear of Orania, the architect of apartheid. It also explains the desire for preserving Afrikaner culture, faith, and language. In 1991, the first 13 inhabitants moved into it. At that time, the town consisted of 90 houses in Orania and 60 in Klein Geluk, all in serious disrepair. Now, even though the company purchased the land legally, it still faced a land claim after 1994 when the new government came in. In November of 2005, about 20 colored families who had lived in Klein Geluk before 1991 lodged a land claim with the government for about 483 hectares, or 1,190 acres of land that now fell within Orania. Now, this land claim was settled in December 2006 when the South African government agreed to pay the claimants 2.9 million rand in compensation for the land. Karel Boshoff's plans for Orania excluded the traditionally Boer republics in the Transvaal and the Free State, which encompassed the economic heartland of South Africa and much of its natural resources. Instead, he focused on an economically underdeveloped and semi-desert area in the Northwestern Cape. He did so because he concluded the remote, desolate nature of the site would not be feared or coveted by the South African government. In this, he was partially correct. The ruling National Party ignored and hoped Orania would fail on its own. Media and content creators remained obsessed with covering Orania. The corrupt legacy Western media obsession with Orania began almost immediately. In 1991, the New York Times described Orania as a ghost town where white supremacists dream of carving out an idyllic homeland. A journalist for the Provincial Jooste Courant visiting in 1993 noted that the houses had been repaired, but the town lacked any meaningful economic activity. There were few jobs available and no money for further development. Now, this was a true statement. These were true statements in 1993 when he visited. Also, it also makes it comical to see black supremacists complain that all jobs are reserved for whites. All jobs that exist in a town were created by the people who live there. They don't exist for whites. They exist for the Afrikaans community. In 1994, the Los Angeles Times described Orania as a zealot's dream and a bastion of intolerance. In 1995, the also leftist Chicago Tribune saw it as the last pathetic holdout of former ruling class of South Africa, continuing that the Afrikaners who once forced blacks to live apart from the rest of society are now living in their own prison. Perhaps, but those whites are not exploiting or abusing other ethnic groups, a fact conveniently ignored from then until these very days by biased journalists and politicians seeking political advantage. Not relying on other ethnic groups is part and parcel of Orania's ethos. So the problem with white rule in South Africa was that it oppressed the black majority. But Orania is not oppressing anybody. So what's the problem? Rebecca Davis of the Daily Maverick feels that what makes Orania different is that it makes no secret of its discrimination. Because of this, the town has come to occupy a place in the public imagination vastly out of proportion to its size. Now, what does she write about the Inganyama Trust? Is their discrimination a matter of no secret in public, since it has to be Zulus in the trust? Why can the Zulus have their own tribe, but Afrikaners can't, Rebecca Davis? In June 2020, the then Gauteng ANC member of the Executive Committee for Education and now Premier for Gauteng Province, Panyaza Lusufi, said that Orania had to fall as it is neither a symbol of inclusivity nor democracy. Does that mean the Inganyama Trust must fall as well? He said, we understand why that institution was established. It has lived its time now. It's now that the place must be liberated and all South Africans must be allowed to stay wherever they want to stay. If you think we will keep quiet, you are wrong. This madness must come to an end. It's truly a betrayal of our call for truly non-racial South Africa. Panyaza Lusufi calling for a non-racial South Africa from the black supremacist ANC in the 21st century. The ANC has betrayed its roots. It's not for all South Africans, and it makes that obvious with its racist laws and its racist policies like the Tourism Relief Fund, not for all South Africans, only for those with dark skin pigmentation. And liberated? That's rich. Orania is liberated from the obscurity of Lusufi's insecurities, the obscurity of his insecurities. ANC veteran and now EFF Member of Parliament Carl Niehaus, as we affectionately call Carl Nyhorst, said, destroy the money, destroy the damn flag, charge these white Orania Boer for their racism, throw them in jail. Really? Carl, it's not racist to want to live amongst your own people. Many public figures have visited Orania over the years, including Northern Cape Premier Dupio Peters in 2004, Julius Malema from not the EFF then, but now the EFF in 2009, Desmond Tutu visited in 2010, former President Jacob Zuma in 2010 as well. And the Patriotic Alliance's Gate McKenzie, now the Minister for Sport, Arts and Culture in South Africa, visited in May of 2023. Now, Zuma said that he was warmly welcomed, that Orania had interesting ideas, and that the Oranians were prepared to live in South Africa but wanted a place to exercise their culture. That's true. Gate McKenzie initially stated the community would teach South Africans a thing or two, but he backtracked on Walsh and Pofu's YouTube channel when he tacitly agreed, well, he didn't tacitly, stated that Orania is racist. So much for backbone. Now, I initially interviewed Joost Syrydom in August of 2020 because so many of my viewers wanted me to do the interview. He was kind enough to grant the Zoom interview, and we discussed Orania. Recently, I was in South Africa and repeatedly asked to travel to Orania. Now, I get this request frequently, but why would I go to Orania? Would I go because it's interesting? Perhaps, but I've already covered this subject. Would I go for clicks? Hardly. My channel is still hidden from most of my potential YouTube viewers, particularly in South Africa. A trip there is not going to gain me any significant viewership. Rather, unsympathetic, dishonest, amateur journalists, content creators who have no insight or understanding into the Afrikaner community, its origins or history, cover the story for clicks. What exactly do they accomplish aside from getting attention for their channels? Well, they often perpetrate false, negative fairy tales about Orania. Now, the story has been covered extensively by media and social media. Orania is 680 kilometers from Pretoria, and there's little to do or see on the way there and back. That's a minimum of 2 days driving, if all goes well. Then I would need to spend at least 3 days on the ground to see things and gain insight. Add to that I would need to be a guest of Orania and would see what they want me to see. 5 days of my time will not be useful for Orania or me. While I would report objectively, the 1,200 views I might get and zero revenue to cover a story covered to death is hardly a wise investment. Now, when I made this same argument during a live stream while I was in South Africa, I got attacked by a right-wing loon as anti-Orania. Where do they get these silly notions? It's in the middle of nowhere and not on any beaten path, which, by the way, was the whole idea in the first place. Now, Orania is inundated with requests to visit by content creators. Morning Shot, Panul, and some UK-based site recently went there. What will my coverage and personal expenses accomplish? More attacks from extremists on the left and right? Well, here's an idea. How about everyone leave Orania alone for a while? Just let them be. And stop this idiotic nonsense. If you're going to be upset about Orania being a place exclusively for Afrikaners who speak Afrikaans and are Dutch Calvinists and agree to abide by the community's rules, which, by the way, is not all white people. Population is about 2,600, 97% is white. That's pretty high, but that doesn't make it racially exclusive. The media's lies make it racially exclusive. You just have to be an Afrikaner, which I'm not, and most of my viewers aren't. No. So what's the problem here? At the same time, I cannot live in the Inganyoma Trust. I'm not a Zulu, and I don't have a problem with that, nor do I have a problem with Orania, and neither should you. These people are not bothering anybody. They're largely self-sufficient, and they want to practice their faith and their language on their own. And why does that frighten people so much? Mostly because of dishonest journalism, the legacy media, and politicians looking for attention. Let's stop giving Orania so much attention and let it be. It's a private corporation. They're not breaking any laws, and they're not harming anyone. So get over it. Cheers.